You win Pennsylvania, you're at the number. Right now, in both states, he has a lead. We'll see how long this lasts. But in our studio tonight is Mr. Butterfly Ballot.
Okay.
His name is John Bolton, and he will tell you that all these states have a law when you go into a mandatory recount. We're going to dive into that in a minute. We'll try and figure that out for you.
We are making a call now. The Fox News decision desk is calling Maine, the state of Maine, for Hillary Clinton. But this is 3 out of the 4 available electoral votes there. We have not called the 2nd congressional district in Maine. Maine is one of 2 states, along with Nebraska, that splits up its electoral votes. So now you have Maine plus 3 for Hillary Clinton, with 1 still remaining out there.
Yeah. To do the math on that, at the moment, with that factored in, if she were to take New Hampshire, run the table in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, she's at 268.
She has to win Arizona or Alaska?
Arizona or Alaska, according to this scenario at the moment.
Okay.
That's a big challenge right now. And, you know, they're breathing pretty heavy in Brooklyn at the moment.
All right, we're going to send it back down to you, Megan.
All right, guys, thank you. So why can't we call any of these states? Why is it hello, Michigan, hello, Minnesota, hello, Arizona, hello, Pennsylvania?
Out here rather than back there doing his work.
That's true. Styrewall is usually on the decision desk. We've yanked him out here tonight, and he's like, you can see, he's like sweating. He's like, get me back there. I don't like not knowing.
Well, I do like knowing more than not knowing, but I also know this. Pennsylvania is hard to call. Now, Carl and I were just talking about, there are some places in Pennsylvania that she has very obviously underperformed. But there is still a path for her, or at least there was as of about 3 minutes ago, a path for her in Pennsylvania to get this done. As far as, you know, we want to be careful about calls even when they look obvious. So something like Arizona, right? So you look at that and you say, well, gosh, that should be enough. But we would rather be, when it's this close, we'd rather be right than be early.
Just looking at so up here on the wall, you've got all the states we haven't called, right? I don't know if it's all of them, but it's a lot of them, the big ones. And look at that. So obviously Michigan is the best one because if he got 16, that's it. He wins the presidency. If we project Michigan for Donald Trump, he wins the presidency. Pennsylvania, same deal. All the others need a little bit of extra. Minnesota's 10, but you can see if he could add, 10 gets him to 264, and then he needs 6, so he can cobble together a couple more. Arizona, we haven't yet called. That's 11. If he could win Arizona and Minnesota, Arizona and one of the others,
well, if he won Arizona and New Hampshire, that would get him to 269. It would mean the worst he could do is a tie, and he wins if it's a tie.
And if he got in Maine's second congressional district is still out.
Well,
Arizona plus New Hampshire.
269. I didn't.
You said 250.
Oh no, 269 would mean a tie, and he's president.
Okay.
So Arizona and New Hampshire would do it.
Oh, good. All right. So listen, we like to reminisce here. We love to go back down old memory lanes. So I'm actually going to take a walk to the decision desk and find out what's the deal with Michigan, what's the deal with Minnesota. It was so fun the last time, so we're just going to, but stakes are different this time.
Tell them I missed them.
We haven't called the election. We're actually just finding out why we haven't called the election, why we haven't called a couple of these key states, and it's a much shorter walk, thanks to our new studio. Here we are. Here they are. Here's all our guys. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Arnon Mishkin, the man of the hour. How you doing?
Terrific, Megan. How are you?
We meet again.
Yes.
All right, so what's the deal? First of all, let's talk about Michigan. What's the deal with Michigan? Why can't you call it?
Right now, we're still waiting on some vote from Detroit and other places, and so even though clearly Trump has a lead, we're not prepared to call it yet.
Because Detroit is considered heavily Democratic.
Democratic area, yes.
So what do you need to see? What the turnout there was, or what?
We need to see the turnout, and most important, we need to understand what the absentee vote is. Because the absentee vote tends to be counted in bizarre ways, county by county, and so we're waiting to see what that vote is like before we can make a call in Michigan.
Any idea what time that will be? It's 1:10 in the morning. Any idea, like, seriously, do they tell you what the timing would be?
What they tell us is soon, and soon could mean anything.
That's not helpful.
I know.
All right, forget Michigan. Let's move on to Minnesota. 10 electoral votes there. That could get them much closer. What's the deal there?
Minnesota, we're also waiting for a lot of vote in the Twin Cities area. which also tends to be Democratic. There does seem to be, Hillary seems to have a slight lead in Minnesota, but it's a very tenuous lead. And when we look at the models, it looks like it's going to be a very close night there.
Wow. Which, again, I mean, most people were not predicting. Minnesota was not supposed to be.
Not at all.
It wasn't considered a toss-up, really.
Not at all.
Okay, Arizona. Why haven't we called that?
Arizona has begun counting vote in a slightly different way. There's a lot of vote that doesn't get counted on Election Day. So it's not clear we're going to be able to make a call in Arizona tonight, but we're going to try.
Pennsylvania. That's the mother lode. If Trump gets that, he's got it.
That's right. Pennsylvania also looks like it's ending up going to be a very close night in Pennsylvania. I wouldn't be surprised if we're not able to call Pennsylvania tonight.
If we're not able to call it at all.
Very possible, yes.
How about Maine's congressional district, second congressional district? Man, they've gotten so much airtime this election.
That's exactly right. This is the district in outstate Maine, the northern part of Maine. Right now, Trump has a lead in the raw vote, but I think it's only about 50% of the vote has been counted there. And so we don't have a model for Maine CD2, but we do have it. It looks like Trump may get that one electoral vote, but we're not ready to call that.
What am I missing? Which one am I forgetting?
The most interesting one you're missing is Alaska. And
Really?
Precisely. Alaska has 3 electoral votes. Historically, Alaska has always gone Republican. Right now, we're looking at conflicting data from Alaska, and Alaska is another state that tends to count vote extremely slowly. And so that's another state that we could be hanging on for a couple of days.
How about New Hampshire and its 4 electoral votes?
New Hampshire.
Joe Trippi is obsessed with New Hampshire. He wants me to ask.
As he should be. New Hampshire is a state that we could very easily also not be calling tonight.
Oh, come on.
I'm sorry.
Should we dock their pay? Is there like, all right, so let me ask you this. You guys they all sit back here, they crunch the numbers, they talk, they compare notes. What explains what we have seen tonight? Do you look at that? Do you look at any of the exit data, or is that all Dana Blanton? But can you help us understand what people misread?
That's a really good question. People are going to be poring over the data for months and possibly years to figure out what really happened. I think what basically happened was in the final polling, we saw that Clinton had roughly a 4-point lead in most of the polls. She was at about 48%, 49%. The question was, what happened to all the folks who were on what I call the movables, folks who said they were either for Johnson, Stein, or were purely undecided? And they ranged from 8 to 10 to 12%, depending on the poll you were looking at. And I think what happened was a lot of those people, they said they weren't for Hillary Clinton, and they weren't. And in the end, they decided to go for Trump. That's my hypothesis of what the polling, it was a misreading of the polling rather than a mistake of the polls.
I'm not going to hold you to this because I know you're crunching numbers in counties and raw vote and things like that now, but do you have a feel on the late deciders? Do you have a feel on whether it really was a late-breaking vote for Trump or whether this was baked in, these late deciders, these people you're talking about, was it the last few days or when was it?
What we saw in the exit poll is that there was some late decided movement towards Trump. But I think what it is evidence that they were basically sort of decided, but they didn't want to say. And then in the end, they went for Trump.
So it is what you're saying that the shy Trump voter really was out there?
I guess so. Yep.
It doesn't seem possible that you can be a shy Trump voter, right? What we know of the Trump voters is they are not shy. They are not shy.
And that's the big difference between this general election and what we were seeing all year in the primaries. All year in the primaries, the Trump number from the polling was exactly the Trump number that he got in the primary. And all the undecided went away from Trump. This time, we're seeing that a lot of that undecided, in fact, wound up being a Trump vote.
All right, last question. What of the states that are still out there?
Oh, and one more thing.
Yeah, go.
The other thing to note is that right now, Clinton is ahead in the popular vote. And that was something actually a lot of analysts understood, that in fact, a Democratic lead of 3 or 4% translated into an electoral college photo finish, which is what we're seeing right now, that basically Democrats run up the score in states like California, New York, Illinois, and roughly 3% of the vote is wasted by Democrats in those states. That's just the way the Continental Congress decided it, and it's wasted in those states. And so, even though you might have a 3% lead in the popular vote, that could translate into an electoral college photo finish.
All right, so I actually have 2 more questions. Number 1 is, does she have any chance left?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay, all right, I had to try. Number 2 is, what is the state you guys think you're most likely to call next? I realize you don't know. Which one are we most likely to get next?
We're looking at a number of states that we could possibly call very quick.
Does it begin with an M?
You were a very good interviewer.
You're not going to tell me?
No, not yet.
Arnon, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you guys. You guys are unsung heroes here at Fox News and all the work you do. You too, Kath. All of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Honored to work with these guys. Back on over to the decision desk. Well, away from the decision desk and back to the anchor desk. Look, Karl Rove stayed seated. He didn't challenge anybody.
That's true.
And there's no bad blood between Karl and Arnon.
So,
That's because we didn't call somebody with 911 votes separating the two candidates.
Were they right or weren't they?
let's not relive it.
Were they right or were they right?
Relive it. It's a painful moment. It's okay. We do love them. It is wonderful to work with them, but we would really like to make some calls.
I think it begins with an
Possible.
M. He wouldn't say so, but you had to see it in his eyes.
It's possible. Carl Cameron is live at Trump headquarters with reaction there as we are waiting on M states to come in.
Hi, Brett. Impatient is probably the operative word of the night. There has not been a single person who has left the Trump Victory Night headquarters, is what they think it now is. The Trump family remains at Trump Tower, impatient to come over here. They're particularly interested in when Pennsylvania might get called, because after Hillary Clinton leading the polls, Donald Trump has moved into a slight lead in the actual vote count, but there's still more of the vote out to be counted. So Donald Trump and his campaign now have to start thinking about putting together a transition team. A couple of weeks ago, when the polls weren't looking all that favorable in some of the battleground states, Donald Trump instructed his transition chairman, Chris Christie, the governor of New Jersey, to slow down on the transition work and pony up some of those people to help him actually win the race. He is on the precipice of doing exactly that, which means that the transition effort has probably fallen behind a little bit. Now he's got to deal with the acceptance speech and putting the transition on overdrive in order to start forming a government, assuming that M state, or maybe the P state of Pennsylvania, or perhaps Arizona and some combination of others, including Alaska, will put him over the top. They would like very much for our decision desk to make their decision so that they can come down here and make their speeches.
You know, on TV jargon, you have what's called Mix Plus, because we can hear the broadcast in the hall there. So you did an excellent job, Carl, talking through the, the reverberation.
Got to keep it interesting. You know, he's too good. You got to throw a few softballs or hardballs at him. Just see if he can still do it. And indeed, he can. Let's see what we can do to Jen Griffin. She's over at the Clinton campaign headquarters. I bet she can do it too, but we like her, so let's see. Hey, Jen.
Hi, Megan. Well, it's quite a different scene over here. There are campaign staff that we've seen in tears. The hall has emptied out quite a bit behind me. We just saw a very surreal scene where Cher walked in, turned around, looked at the board, and walked back out. We just saw Donna Shalala, who is the current head of the Clinton Foundation, walking out. She had her coat on. We saw Ken Salazar, who is heading Clinton's transition team. He just walked through the crowd. He had a very somber look on his face. A very different mood over here at Clinton headquarters, Megan.
Any sign of Huma or...
No, we have not seen Huma. We've not seen the Hillary Clinton herself, but certainly the lower-level staff who we've been traveling with on planes for the last few months, they are despondent, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And it's, you know, it's always sad on these nights to see the side that's, in this case, likely to lose, and soon we'll know one side has lost, because they put so much effort into it. You can feel their pain, and you can feel, you know, how badly they want it to happen. But when you look at this result tonight, Chris Wallace, you tell me whether people are going to consider that Anthony Weiner, in a way, helped bring down Hillary Clinton tonight.
Sure.
It certainly didn't help.
They're going to look at around a lot of things, and clearly the Clinton camp isn't going to blame Hillary Clinton, right? They're not going to say, except for Neera Tanden, who seems to be the one truth teller in the group, who will say...
She's emerged as the MVP of the WikiLeaks emails.
Yeah, absolutely. That, you know, we'll say, why did you not get this out 2 years ago? But clearly, you know, to people who may not have followed it, because Anthony Weiner sexted, the FBI began an investigation, and they seized his laptop, and they looked at it and found all these emails, and that led James Comey, in what I personally think was a mistake, to announce that they were going to reopen the investigation. Looking back at it, and you're a lawyer, I think James Comey should have kept his mouth shut the entire time. Should not have said anything in July, should not have said anything in October, should not have said anything this weekend, just should have done what a prosecutor does, said nothing.
I think you could justify him doing that, but I think you can also justify the way he did it now. I think probably the most controversial thing, in my view as a lawyer, that he did was the explanation of why he didn't bring the charges, where he really went after her and called her a liar and all that, which he didn't need to do, and I understood the controversy behind that. But as a lawyer, I had no problem with him announcing where he stood. It's not his job to manipulate the electoral process or protect her from it. It's just his job to keep Congress informed. And I do think that Hillary Clinton has only herself to blame for the email problems. I mean, she, as a lawyer, she pressed the limits, and she didn't do what she was supposed to do. And she's come out and admitted that now.
The only thing I'd say in that regard is it is so freighted when you say something that we're going to reopen an investigation. Normally, the FBI doesn't announce they're reopening an investigation, and he wouldn't have had to announce it if he hadn't gone before Congress and said, here are the situation under which I will announce, reopen the investigation.
But what if he hadn't done it? What if he hadn't done it? And then in that treasure trove on Anthony Weiner's laptop were 650,000 documents that were classified, that did relate to national security.
Well, it turns out now they could have gone through them and found out and announced it before election.
Let's, if we could, take an update right now on net gains of the House and Senate, because you have the Senate with, we are still waiting on Missouri, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania in the Senate. And Louisiana is heading to a runoff December 10th. The Senate, remember, had to have a net gain of 5 for Democrats to pick up control of the U.S. Senate. If they lose the White House, they needed all 5. Well, you're talking about Blunt in Missouri, Ayotte in New Hampshire, Toomey in Pennsylvania, and a Louisiana would be a red state holding on if they flipped it on December 10th. Is the runoff scheduled. So you have 4 remaining. They would have to run the table on the remaining 4 to take control. And once we have one of these that comes in for Republicans, the control of the U.S. Senate will stick in the Republicans'
Our decision desk has not called it, but the Democratic candidate in Missouri has called the race, and he just conceded to Roy Blunt. Republicans have kept the Blunt seat. And
that's what you call being careful on the decision desk.
That's pretty good evidence that he's done.
I don't know, because I'm not back there. But
maybe you should take the walk.
if she can't get it out of him, you think I can? Lord, no. But if that's reported,
and there's a lot of, I'm hearing seeing a lot of stuff that people say that Toomey's got it in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm getting emails from the state Republican Party chairman, Rob Gleason, telling me, why is Fox not calling it? We're up by 70,000 votes. And I told him,
here we go again.
Get a lot of that.
Let's go now to Molly Line in Concord, New Hampshire. That state is still too close to call, and we have not called the Senate race there either. Molly.
Yeah, the votes are still being counted. The results are still coming in, and yet the party is pretty much over here at the headquarters in Concord. Just a few journalists struggling around. We're like the crumbs left on the plate here as things wrap up tonight. When this all got started, we knew it would be a nail-biter. The campaigns acknowledged that, and that's why we saw Hillary Clinton here on Sunday. We saw Donald Trump here yesterday. They knew this would be down to the wire and that big investments would have to be made, and that's the same in the Senate race as well. The incumbent Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte was facing a very tough challenge from the governor here in the state, the Democratic governor Maggie Hassan, and that proved to be true. And here we are, well after midnight, still waiting for the final numbers and to find out who actually won this race. Everyone has essentially gone home at this point in time, and we'll be waiting to see as those results come in and to get the final count. I mean, this was a tough, hard-fought battle, particularly in the Senate race, where these 2 women faced off against each other. Long resumes, competent, well-liked, recognizable figures here in the state, so they were very evenly matched, and in the national race as well. You know, 2 figures coming here to the state and battling it out. There was a lot of retail politicking going on. That's what you have to do here in New Hampshire, and that's what we saw up to the last moment in the Senate race today. Both Kelly Ayotte and Maggie Hassan were out at the polls today asking for every last vote until the last second before they went to their respective headquarters and got ready to give potential speeches. We did hear from Kelly Ayotte very briefly. She left the night on a high note, essentially saying that they were upbeat about where the race is, but they were going to do this the New Hampshire way and ensure that every vote was counted. Brett?
Molly Lyon in New Hampshire.
And this is a big race call for you now. We are ready to project that Pat Toomey has won the election in Pennsylvania. That's another Republican victory there, fending off his challenger, as you can see, by a decent margin. Right, yeah. Exactly, by a decent margin. So this means, if I'm not mistaken, this means that the Republicans will officially retain control of the upper chamber. That's it. So the Democrats are not going to be winning control of the Senate. The Democrats are not going to be winning control of the Congress. And at this rate, it certainly doesn't look like they're going to be winning control of the White House.
And if you're right, Carl, and we don't have a call as of yet, but if you're right about Missouri, you're starting to talk about 51-49. You have still Missouri.
Starwald, am I right about Missouri?
I got it right here. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch says that Jason Kander has conceded the race.
And there you have it. So Roy Blunt holds off the Democrat, Jason Kander, who was expected to have a win there in Missouri. So now you have Democrats held off in Missouri, in Pennsylvania, in North Carolina, still waiting on New Hampshire, and also obviously that Louisiana runoff December 10th.
On top of that, we're just getting this in from Capitol Hill, where Speaker Paul Ryan called Donald Trump earlier this evening. The two had a very good conversation. The speaker congratulated Mr. Trump on his big night and also spoke with his good friend, Governor Mike Pence. And so a bit of an outreach already starting there. So perhaps we love Sean, but maybe it could be that they're on different pages. We'll see how Donald Trump reacts.
The new president is going to have plenty to say grace over without picking a fight with the Republican leadership. There'll come a time when...
But is that old school thinking? Let me just ask you, is that old school thinking? Because
you know what?
Trump is he's the destroyer, right? He's going to bust things up.
It may be old school thinking, but it's 220 years old school thinking. Traditionally, the House and Senate do not like to be dictated to by the sitting president of the United States, particularly when it comes to choosing their own leadership. I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat. Whenever a president has gotten a little bit too overboard on that, he's paid a price. We've seen it throughout history, and you know, better to leave them to choose their own leaders and work with their leaders than to try and influence it.
And a lot stands to depend also on who it is that Trump surrounds himself with. We don't. Yikes. We know Jeff Sessions is one of the people that he has his outreach to Congress. Will probably be his point man if he does, in fact, win one of those two. Any of those three states up there that you see at the top of the nation, if he gets just one of those, Jeff Sessions is probably going to be a very influential human being on Capitol Hill. But who else rounds out his team? Who else rounds out that organization? That says a lot about how well he could get along with somebody like Paul Ryan.
We don't know, do we?
We don't really know.
We have no idea who
they
would be in the Trump administration. Other than Sarah Palin, I've never heard him actually say who he would put in his cabinet, and I don't know that he fully meant that.
And what's Chris Christie doing tonight?
That's a good question.
Yeah, how about that? He's supposed to be leading the transition team. He had some other kind of transitions taking place in New Jersey, like former top aides being transitioned to felon status.
I've had a businessman actually tell me that the Trump transition team has been terrific. And that it's organized and they know what they're doing, and guys say they're very impressed with these people, and I guess Christie should get some credit for that since he was the leader of it.
And let me say this about Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions, if he wants to leave Congress and go into the Trump, again, we're all assuming that he's going to win a Trump administration. My guess is he could get any job he wants. He was the first and only senator to support Donald Trump. Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense. I would think he could get any job he wants. Trump owes him big time.
As long as we're throwing out names there, what about Kellyanne Conway and what a force for good
I think
she has been for the Trump campaign?
I think Kellyanne Conway was going to come out of this with her reputation enhanced, win or lose.
Yep.
Because everybody who watched this could see that the influence that she had on him was positive and smart, and she got him to do the right. And then at the end, of course, I think she deserves a lot of credit, and of course he does too, for the way he handled himself in the closing days when he was on message and effective as a candidate, and you could see it on the stump, you could see it, you could sense it. And so I think she comes out of this.
As long as we're throwing that phrase around, Reince Priebus, who you were saying, one of you was saying, was the one who was saying to him, stay on message, stay calm. There's some thought, Ryan Priebus, who it had been thought was going to run again to be the Republican National Committee chair, there's now talk about as a possible chief of staff in the White House.
Let's assume that he does get to the number, Dana. I mean, it's a big job to go from tonight to the 73 days to the inauguration. All of the positions that you have to fill, the transition on different levels of a new administration. That's a huge, huge job.
It's a huge deal, and that's why they start so early. So right after the conventions is when both candidates said, okay, I'm going to set up my transition team. If you go back to 2008, one of the things that George W. Bush told the senior staff was, we will have the most professional transition from our administration to whoever wins next. And one of the reasons he was so concerned about that was not because like W's were taken off of keyboards when he came in, but because it is a time of vulnerability for the country when it comes to national security. And you know that our enemies are out there. They're looking at this. They like to strike when there's a moment of like a transition period. And so the transition teams, I think if what Britt is saying is correct, bodes well for them. There's going to be a lot to do. They will be helped by the fact that for Senate-confirmed positions, you have likely to the Republicans to keep the Senate majority. That will help and go a long way to helping getting a lot of people into their positions right away so that they're not held up in the nomination process by Democrats.
Now suddenly these Republicans look like geniuses for not confirming Merrick Garland, who is a pretty moderate
And you know who led the charge on that was Senator Mitch McConnell, who said on the first day he said, we will not do this. And he withstood a lot of controversy, saying that how dare you not give the president a vote, and he never caved on that.
And Democrats thought they were going to gain seats on that very issue, just that issue.
And let me just say that, okay, hypocrisy has a place here, because you can imagine that Democrats now will employ the same tactics to stop a Republican president from moving on a Supreme Court nomination. One of the things that I think we've overlooked here tonight is we are a divided country. So many of these races are decided by a point or two, or we talked about the shift in terms of the undecided voters who moved late. I don't know that it was, as has been suggested, that, oh my gosh, you know, Donald Trump just handled it so well at the end by not making controversial statements. It's not like people don't know who Donald Trump is or don't know his capacity for intemperate behavior. I think it was much more a statement about we, the American people, very divided, people who are discontented for one reason or another, and people who really feel like they've been forgotten and left behind.
How much does President Obama have to do with that feeling?
I think he has a great deal to do with it to some extent, but I think also the obstructionist policies pursued by Mitch McConnell and the Freedom Caucus in the House have, in fact, exaggerated the division.
But Juan, they
and the
gave him
anger
back,
in the
it looks like they gave him back control of the Senate. If they were so angry at Mitch McConnell, why wouldn't they give it to the Democrats?
I think you have a lot of incumbents here, and clearly that was a disadvantage for the GOP. They had incumbents running. So in a very tight race here, I think incumbents had the advantage. And I mean, you look at what happened in Nevada, clearly Harry Reid and that machine was almost as if an incumbent was running. But I think Pat Toomey, I think that what we've just seen in Missouri is evidence of the advantage of incumbency.
But you speak of the hypocrisy, Juan, and trust me, we covered it night after night. When Barack Obama was handing down executive orders like it was candy, I mean, he was handing them out. It was like night after night, immigration, people were standing up, people like law professor Jonathan Turley and many others saying, this is a slippery slope. And this is not somebody who had been known for defending a lot of Republicans. This is a slippery slope if we let the executive have this kind of power. And the Democrats said, it's fine, because they liked the Dreamers executive order, they liked the other, the attempted executive order on immigration, which was later struck down by the courts. And the warning was, if a Republican gets into this office, are these same people defending this action going to defend it this way? And you know that they will not.
Well, the thing is, it was a counter to the obstructionism that I was describing to you earlier. So I think among the Democrats, it was rationalized
But the system is designed to be obstructionist.
The system is designed to allow
That's the point of the system, is to obstruct. That's why it's there.
No, I think historically Americans have, in fact, sought to get something done. and sought compromise. And what we've seen from Republicans under Obama was exactly the
They're going to get something done with the Republicans from the look of it.
I'm going to see compromise and head to a break. And when we come back, we'll continue our discussion about what looks like a momentous night, probably the biggest story any of us have covered.
Or will ever cover.
We'll be right back. About Michigan. They want to hear about, where else do they want to hear about? New Hampshire.
They are not alone.
They are not alone. We're back with our panel, Britt, Chris, Dana, Juan, Monica, Chris, and Carl. As you look at the national popular vote, Donald Trump has now taken the lead, 48.2% to 47.1%, 611,000 Americans have voted for Donald Trump as of right now. That is pretty amazing, Chris Steyerwalt, if you think of where he was at the beginning of all of this and the primary, the Republican primary.
I'm doing some back of the brain math here. I think when it comes to turnout models, we may put some things to the test. And I think that the number of Democrats who stayed home may be part of the story here. And I think whatever combination of Democrats who didn't take Donald Trump seriously, who made the same mistake that Jeb Bush and other Republicans made when they said, oh, Trump, whatever, and didn't take him seriously, and those Democrats, how effective was WikiLeaks? Pretty daggone effective, I'd say. How many pry bars were they able to put in there against Hillary Clinton and other Democrats to foment those resentments?
Or do you think it was WikiLeaks or the Russians?
Comrade, I'm not going to weigh into all that exactly, but we know
Listen, though, Juan, even if the Russians were behind it, and that's not good, the Russians didn't make Donna Brazile give Hillary Clinton the debate questions.
No.
I mean, that behavior was exposed by the WikiLeaks revelation.
And let me ask you, was there a complimentary exposure of emails and calls on the Trump side?
Nope.
No, but there was a tape.
What? You mean the
Access Hollywood?
No, I'm talking about
happen in a campaign.
Which was
I'm talking about Karl Rove
stole
or
and
me
sent
or you.
the Trump taxes to the New York Times.
That's not the same. Come on.
Why isn't it?
That's
you don't think that was
journalism.
stolen?
That's like.
You don't think that was stolen, Juan?
I think it was leaked. There's a difference between a leak to a
what's
reporter.
What's the second name of Wiki? Wiki what?
That's, you know what? That's not on target.
What's the difference between hacking email and stealing tax returns?
The difference, Chris, is that you have to understand a foreign government seeking to intervene in American
I agree with you about the Russians.
That's what I'm saying.
AP's called it.
Monica.
Yeah, you know, we've been talking a lot about why Donald Trump may, in fact, win the presidency tonight, but we haven't spent a lot of time talking about why Mrs. Clinton may have lost tonight.
Right.
She had a corruption problem. She had an honesty and trustworthy problem. She had a likability problem. And perhaps more than anything else, she never offered voters a clear vision for where she wanted to take the country. And she also never offered a compelling reason to vote for her rather than against Donald Trump. And I think all of those factors came into play, in addition to the fact that sort of the unprotected people of the country are in a total revolt against the bipartisan ruling class. And in terms of a divided country, I understand a lot of these races are very tight. But when you take a look at that map, it looks pretty darn red to me. And if you think that Donald Trump is going to win the presidency and the Republicans are going to hold both the Senate and the House, this looks like a complete repudiation of President Obama and the status quo and the Democratic agenda.
Think about that. There have been pieces run. Frontline, I think, recently ran a piece talking about this moment at the 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner, where President Obama got up there and just went after Trump, went after him. It was brutal. It was retribution for Trump's birtherism and for all that Trump had done on Barack Obama's birthplace and so on. And he embarrassed Trump in front of a room full of people. And the theory was this the moment that Donald Trump said to himself, I'm coming for you. You think I'm a joke? Yeah, I'm coming for your legacy. I'm coming for your job. You think I'm a joke? Stand by. And whether whether Barack Obama has himself to thank or blame, depending on your point of view, for what has happened tonight to his legacy and his predictions.
It was a pretty funny speech.
He deserved to throw
It was funny.
The Lion King part was really good.
That was
really
yeah.
good.
Dana, your thoughts on that?
Well, I have been thinking about what I think will be the inevitable result, that Donald Trump will win the presidency. So then I immediately start thinking about the transition and then how do you get from one administration to the next. It will be very interesting to see how President Obama decides to speak about this. Obviously, Hillary Clinton is going to have to speak first, but soon after that, you're going to want to hear from the President of the United States. You know, he tweeted something today that no matter what happens tonight, the sun will come up tomorrow. Or now in like 4 hours. But whether he is able to set aside some of that personal disgust that he expressed through a humorous speech, but also then on the campaign trail. This is one of the first times in many, many decades that a president has actually gone out and campaigned. Partly that's because there was unpopularity problems, but also because he knew that it is so important to cement his legacy for him to have been followed by Hillary Clinton. And if that does not happen, that will be extremely dangerous for him.
And Obama has held open a day later this week to meet with a new president. Yep. So imagine that shot, which we always see. We saw it with Bush and Obama. Imagine Donald Trump and Barack Obama, two men who can't stand each other, walking down the colonnade and the Rose Garden together.
But they can do it. Listen, not to compare that situation to my own relationship with Donald Trump. But for the record, he and I had this dust up, as you know. You guys know at the first debate. He was very unhappy with that question, as you may be familiar. And months later, he attacked me for months. I went to see him at Trump Tower, and he could not have been more gracious. He was kind. He was charming. He was quick to forget it all, as was I. And we did fine from that point forward. Again, I'm not comparing the two relationships. I'm saying that as much as we know him as a man who holds a grudge and won't forget, I don't know whether that is reality.
I'm frankly thinking less of Donald Trump than I am Barack Obama.
Right.
I mean, Donald Trump's going to be the winner. He's coming in. He's moving in.
It's all good.
Imagine Barack Obama with a man he has utter contempt for and turning over the keys to the White House.
But it's also important to remember that Barack Obama right now has a 55% approval rating.
Yeah. So in part maybe because they looked at the other two candidates.
Well, I was about to say. That could be.
This president's pretty
right.
Okay.
But in terms of what we're hearing tonight, in terms of some of the analysis, it says, well, this is a repudiation of Obama, Obamacare, the Obama economic, the Obama foreign policy, the Iran deal. I could go on. You got to stop and say, well, what is going on in America that you can get a 55% approval for a president at the end of his second term? Very unusual. And at the same time, have this very close, but it seems to me, I would agree that it looks as if we're going to have a President Trump.
Can we give the president some credit? Jen Psaki said the president's ready to hand the baton over. That's what she said. He's ready, whomever. Is it Trump? Is it Clinton? He's ready to do it. We heard the kind-hearted, patriotic remarks that Barack Obama made about a Trump protester who showed up at his rally.
Yep.
He said that that man was a veteran who deserved our respect. Now, I believe that the presidency, people grow in office. I think people become more wise. They become more mature. We've heard divisive things from Barack Obama in the past. There is no question about it. But this is an opportunity for, as we would say back home, you have to give people the opportunity to do the right thing because sometimes they're going to surprise you. And this is an opportunity for both of these men and for this woman to do the right thing for the country and surprise us.
Let's talk about a couple of the people who helped him get there. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, who today said, what, Karl Rove? 2-to-1 chance that he becomes president of the United States?
He was on radio in North Dakota and said Trump's chances were 2 out of 3 of winning and hers were 1 out of 3.
Former mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, who we talked to earlier, who was confident he was going to pull out Florida. Monica?
Yeah, I mean, these are people who held serious positions in the U.S. government, elected positions. Mayor, in the case of Rudy Giuliani, who put their serious reputations on the line very early to support Donald Trump. And I believe they'll be richly rewarded in any Trump administration.
And let's not sugarcoat it. Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham at this channel on her radio show.
And Coulter.
Among
and Coulter.
And Coulter's the happiest person in America tonight.
And Monica. And Monica, of course.
Don't forget Eric Bowling.
Eric Bowling, Janine Pirro.
There were lots.
But what about Steve Bannon, Dana, who is the proprietor of Breitbart, which is described as alt-right, this alt-right website, who came into the campaign late, and everyone said, oh, Steve Bannon. But Trump did become more disciplined when Steve Bannon was in there. And Steve Bannon, he said some very controversial things, and he's a very controversial man. And the question
But has been very quiet during the campaign, right? So, like, very behind the scenes. I don't know a lot about his management style, or even, and I don't know him at all. I don't know if he wants to
He does
serve
not
in
like
government.
Republicans.
No, that's true. But I don't know if he wants to serve in government. Like, setting that aside, I mean, a lot of people don't like Republicans or Democrats. But so now that if they win, they get to govern. And then governing is different than campaigning. And it's wonderful. It's very rewarding. I don't know if it's richly rewarding. That's probably not the best term to use. But in terms of like your personal fulfillment and professional fulfillment, being able to serve your country, yeah, that's a big deal. I don't know Steve Bannon if he wants to actually serve. Sometimes people work on campaigns and then they're like, okay, you take it from here because I'm going to go do something else.
What's going to happen to Trump TV now? Donald Trump's going to be busy running the country.
White House TV.
White House TV. Let's also talk about his businesses, which he's going to hand over, he says, to his family.
This is going to be a problem because they're going to have to be sensitive to the same kind of concerns that Hillary Clinton was asked to be sensitive to when she was given the position as Secretary of State. On January 13th, 2009, she appeared before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and both Democrats and Republicans cautioned her about the potential for conflicts of interest, or even the appearance of conflicts of interest that the foundation could present. Same thing's going to happen when you got an international business operating both here and abroad.
But we do have a model for this. Michael Bloomberg, who ran a multi-billion-dollar empire, was elected mayor of New York City, put a lot of his business interests into a trust, turned the business over to trusted aides, ran the city of New York, and then went back to his business.
John Podesta is said to be headed over to the Javits Center, and Secretary Clinton is not going with him.
What do you make of that?
I think they think it's over. I mean, there's this. Pennsylvania's been called, it's relevant to this story, by a number of news organizations, including the Associated Press and the New York Times. So obviously, the fact that we haven't called it may well be the right decision, but that may well be what's affecting the Clinton camp, and they're looking at this and saying there's no way.
Let's go to Jennifer Griffin at the Clinton camp to get the latest there. Jennifer?
Well, Brett, we just learned that John Podesta, campaign chairman for Hillary Clinton, will be taking the stage shortly. He's on his way over here to the Javits Center. It's not clear at this point in time whether Hillary Clinton herself will be making her way over to the Javits Center tonight. What we've noticed is there are a few more people streaming in. They've put on the music that we've come to expect from the campaign, what we've heard on the campaign trail for months, a little bit more upbeat atmosphere, but but the looks on people's faces still very glum. We've seen a number of people in tears, and it's hard to know exactly what John Podesta is going to say, but that's what we can report at this moment.
Okay, Jennifer, thank you.
Wait, so Jennifer, so you're suggesting then that John Podesta is coming over there, he may speak, and we may not hear from Hillary Clinton at all tonight?
Well, there is certainly that possibility at this point, Megan. All we know at this point is that John Podesta is making his way over here, and he's expected to speak to the crowd.
Well, that is very interesting. If we are not seeing the candidate go there, I mean, it's reminiscent, Chris, of Nashville when we had Daley come out and speak to the crowd there in Nashville in 2000 instead of Al Gore. And I was there, and I flew from there to Tallahassee to start the recount.
You know, when I did the third debate and I asked Trump would he accept the results of the election, I didn't ask Hillary Clinton. I obviously made an oversight. I mean, because one would assume if she were going to concede that she would go over to do that in public. So the fact that she isn't going over, and if he does speak, he's either going to say it's a long night and we're not going to know anything.
That makes sense.
All right, Kelly.
But when you're seeing, and listen, we haven't called it yet either, right? But several other people are suggesting that not only might Trump win Pennsylvania, but he might win a few of these extra states. I mean, if that is the case, what good does she do herself by not coming out tonight? Is holding on for hope that she's somehow going to run the table on every single state that's still out there?
I think Jennifer is still out there. She asked this question about conceding, I think.
Well, Brett, actually, when we flew after the third debate, we flew on the plane with Hillary Clinton leaving Las Vegas, and it was the first question that I did ask Hillary Clinton after Chris had asked the question of Donald Trump on stage, and that had been the headline from the third debate. So I asked Clinton when she came back to talk to the press at the back of the plane, I said, will you accept the results? And people laughed it off at the time. She laughed it off at the time. She did not actually answer the question, and then she lambasted Donald Trump for what he had said at the podium, but she did not answer the question, and I did ask it of her.
You know, you look back at this race and how, and the campaign that she ran, and of course, now it's 20/20 hindsight, and she's going to be ripped to, you know, high heavens. But truly, Chris, the lack of access that she gave to the press, right? Trump spent the whole year beating up on the press, but at least he made himself available to most people. She was in the Presidential Protection Program. She had so many opportunities when Trump was down. And you know, you saw this time and time again, where she would surge ahead of him. He'd be down here. 2 weeks would pass. He'd be right back up there again. Again, she'd be up here. Same thing, over and over and over again. She could never finish him. And remember in August, after the first debate, and he attacked the Khan family, and she went underground. She didn't speak to anybody. She barely had any campaign events. Even to the end, she was having so many fewer campaign events to him up until that last week when she saw trouble. And people believed she was a person who was secretive, who was hiding something, who was not accessible, who they couldn't trust.
No, that's right. I mean, if his flaw that he had for the entire campaign was lack of experience and temperament, hers was lack of character. It was that people continued to have grave doubts, and obviously the Comey investigation and the emails, and as you say, the fact that she, one, did it, and then two, lied about it for months. You know, I mean, you look back at what she said in that original news conference at the United Nations in March of 2015, and when I finally did get an interview with her in July after the convention, I mean, just the contradictions. Forget whether what she did was right or wrong. What she told the American people and what Comey found were diametrically opposed. And in fact, in that interview, she said that they weren't. She said that Comey had cleared her, and then that became a whole issue. So over and over again, when there was a path to, to put it out.
Like Lanny Davis told her she should.
Right. She wouldn't do it. So, and that was, if she loses tonight, going to turn out to be the fatal.
We got to hit a break here, Britt. Kellyanne Conway just tweeted out, she said, things that were true. Undercover Trump vote, at Mike Pence for VP, Hillary's floor and ceiling are same, rally crowds matter, we expanded the map. We are going to look at the map and waiting on these states after Fox News continues election coverage in an election we have not seen ever before. We'll be right back. Out of the Clinton campaign headquarters, let's head over to, and there's our crowd outside the Fox News headquarters. Let's head over to Jennifer Griffin. Jen?
Well, Brett, we've just learned that John Podesta is heading over here to the Javits Center from the Peninsula Hotel, where Hillary Clinton and her family have been waiting tonight. And we understand that Hillary Clinton will not be heading over to the Javits Center. So we are still waiting on John Podesta. We don't know what he will tell the crowd that is gathered here. It seems like the room has filled up a bit in the last few minutes, but we can now report that Hillary Clinton will not be coming to the Javits Center tonight.
Will not.
Will not.
So what do we take from that, Jen?
Well, I think what we take from that is it's not clear whether the campaign is prepared to concede. And so I think there are still a number of races that are very close. I think they feel that there are certain states, whether it's New Hampshire or others, that might be in recount territory.
Well, let's talk about the irony of this moment. The fact that there was that much concern from Democrats that Donald Trump said he would not concede the race. There was that much uproar in the Hillary Clinton campaign that he said, I'm going to have to wait and see what happens to Chris Wallace on that third debate. The fact that there was that much press about that comment, and yet here we are, and Hillary Clinton, it appears, is not going to concede tonight, even if Donald Trump gets over this magic number of 270.
Well, that's exactly right, Brett. In fact, we're trying to find that moment on board the plane where I asked her that very question, whether she would accept the results. But again, these last few states have not come in yet. Some of them are very close, and it is clear from their analytics that they feel that it's still very close.
Okay, Jen, we appreciate the info. If you get anything else, let us know. We want to head over to our decision desk, which has made some calls, and obviously some calls are still pending.
Here we are.
And Megan didn't walk there this time, but there she is.
Hello. We're here. Arden's here again. Arden, Michigan, great to see you. So, first of all, let's start with the Senate. Why haven't we called, I mean, we've sort of said the Republicans are going to retain the power in the Senate, but why haven't we officially called that?
There are several unknowns in the Senate now. The first is that there's a Louisiana runoff which takes place in early December between a Democrat and a Republican. And while I think a lot of people say the Republican is advantaged in that runoff, we can't make a call for the Senate until we have an actual result from Louisiana.
So you're not going to make a call on the Senate tonight? We're never going to get the fancy graphic on the Senate tonight?
That is correct. It is theoretically possible that we could get the Democrats to 50, but that would require, to believe that they had the control of the Senate would require Hillary Clinton.
Let me stand you by, because John Podesta is taking the stage now at Hillary's headquarters. Let's listen.
Well, folks, I know you've been here a long time, and it's been a long night, and it's been a long campaign. But I could say we can wait a little longer, can't we? We're still counting votes, and every vote should count. Several states are too close to call, so we're not going to have anything more to say tonight. So listen to me. Everybody should head home. You should get some sleep. We'll have more to say tomorrow. I want you to know, I want every person in this hall to know, and I want every person across the country who supported Hillary to know that your voices and your enthusiasm means so much to her and to Tim and to all of us. We are so proud of you. And we are so proud of her. She's done an amazing job, and she is not done yet. So thank you for being with her. She has always been with you. I have to say this tonight. Good night. We will be back. We'll have more to say. Let's get those votes counted, and let's bring this home. Thank you so much for all of you have done. You are in all of our hearts. Thank you.
John Podesta, chairman of the Clinton campaign, with a message of head home and get some sleep. Certainly not what they expected to be delivering at campaign headquarters for Hillary Clinton tonight. Now the ball is in Donald Trump's court, as none of the television networks have called this race for him, nor have they called Pennsylvania for him. Some of the outstanding states we're waiting on. The Associated Press has made some different calls. We're here at our decision desk with Arden, Michigan, who's the head of the desk, and I'm going to ask you about that. So first of all, where do we stand on Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania right now, Trump is in the lead. There are, however, a number of outstanding votes that have not yet been counted. And more important, there are a number of counties where we actually don't know how many votes are really outstanding, particularly absentee votes. And the thing about absentee votes is absentee votes tend to be different than election day votes. So until we see how many absentee votes are outstanding and get that number, it's going to be very difficult to make a call.
Do you agree that that state might not be called tonight?
That is very possible.
Wow. All right, what about, we're back in Michigan now. What's happening in Michigan?
In Michigan, we're waiting for a dump of absentee votes in a number of places, particularly in places where the Democrats tend to be very strong, such as Detroit. And until we see that, it's going to be, we won't be able to get to where we would like to be, which is 99.95% probability of victory.
So you might not call Michigan tonight?
That is a possibility, although we'll be staying here late and seeing how the vote comes in.
Minnesota?
Minnesota is a very close state. Right now, I think Hillary Clinton is up, but it's nowhere near the place where you could be callable. The state would be callable.
Are we waiting on an additional vote or absentee? What's the problem there?
More vote to be counted, and similarly in New Hampshire, which is also looks like it's headed.
It's so small. How can we not have all the votes in New Hampshire?
That's a really good question.
What's the answer?
I don't know.
Do you think you're going to be able to call New Hampshire tonight?
I think New Hampshire tonight is potentially very doubtful.
Really?
Yes.
All right, so maybe we should start with what you think you might be able to call. What is outstanding that looks like a possibility?
We may be able to call Pennsylvania president, and we may be able to call Michigan president, but that would take within an hour or two before we can call that.
You'll know within the next 2 hours, you think?
I would suspect, yes.
Whether you can call it, not who's won necessarily.
I think actually those two answers will converge.
They're the same.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, do you agree with John Podesta's decision to come out there and tell everybody to go to sleep and go home, and her decision not to concede tonight?
Well, you guys pay me to count vote. But I will say that I would argue that one of the big mistakes Al Gore made in 2000 was appearing to be about to concede and then not to concede. So I think that what Podesta is doing today, or what the Clinton people are doing today, which is actually what the Nixon people kind of did in 1960 when they didn't concede, although in the case of 1960 he sort of appeared to concede and then didn't concede. I think what they're doing is probably very shrewd from their perspective.
Because she doesn't, I mean, you tell me whether you believe she's thinking she's got a good shot of still winning this tonight, or whether she's just thinking there is some chance, so I'll wait to see whether that pans out.
I think it's the some chance, so I should wait to see how this pans out.
And now the decision is Donald Trump's. What would you do if you were Trump? Would you wait if you've got all the networks refusing to actually call it because it is tight? It's tight. Do you go out there and claim victory, or do you still go out there and give a uniting message and a standby for tomorrow? Brett?
We're looking live at the Javits Center where Democrats in the Hillary Clinton camp are leaving. They're kind of filing out of there after John Podesta said what he said. But to your question, Megan, what happens at Trump HQ? What's the decision over there? Carl Cameron is over there. And let's check in with Campaign Carl. What happened?
They're still sort of trying to assess what was meant by Podesta, and then we'll have more to say tomorrow. Obviously, the Trump campaign sees victory, and they're waiting for Fox to call Pennsylvania and some of our competitors to call some of the states that we've called that they have not. At this point, there are a variety of combinations. If all of the networks had done things simultaneously, where he would already be over the top. The Trump campaign is impatient. The Trump supporters are impatient. We've had chance of na 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 na, hey, goodbye. We've had chance of call it, call it, call it. They want this over with. They came in here apprehensive, saying that it was a very difficult time for them. They were cautiously, hopefully, thinking that they could be optimistic. And now, there's a little bit of righteous indignation growing here. They're screaming again, call it, call it, call it. The Trump camp recognizes that they are about to take over. But when the numbers don't come out, and when Arnon, Michigan is saying we are going to be right, not first, they're just going to have to be patient.
That's exactly right, Carl, and I know how tough that is, again, when they're broadcasting our channel there in the hall. Nice job. Karl Rove, what do? You're campaign manager. What do you tell your candidate?
Get a few hours sleep, polish the speech, and be prepared to speak to the country. We're all junkies. We're here in the studio, and we got a lot of people watching it. But America, a lot of it is now gone to sleep. And better to do it in the next morning. You may remember this happened in 2004. President George W. Bush reelected, but it was a late night in large part because the exit polls had poisoned the media coverage so badly and nobody thought he was really going to win. And he decided, out of 2 o'clock in the morning, I remember we were in the state dining room, which is the campaign headquarters that night, war room that night, and there was a discussion, should he go out then and declare? And he wisely made a decision, I'm going to wait until tomorrow morning, and showed up at the Reagan Center the next day, and the country was awake and paying attention.
But do you send your own person out, your own Podesta?
I'd send somebody out.
Kellyanne Conway?
I'd send somebody out. I'd send somebody,
We had Don Evans.
Yeah, Don Evans. We had the campaign chairman job. So,
send Ivanka.
Jeff Sessions is there, or Rudy Giuliani is there. Send them out and say the candidate is optimistic and upbeat, and but we're going to wait until the rest of the votes come in. But we're so confident, and we're looking forward to seeing you here tomorrow morning.
Which is what shows confidence. You don't show if Trump shows up tonight and comes out and says, "I claim it for myself." This does not look confident. He's got everything is stacking up in his favor. He could hardly ask for a better map at this moment.
And nothing he says tonight's going to change the outcome.
Exactly.
So no point in doing it. And as to the question of calling races, I was sitting basically in a different studio where you are tonight, Brett, 16 years ago when we called Florida for Bush, and then we had to take the call back, and it was sometime about 2 o'clock in the morning when we finally recalled it, thinking that was final. And 37 days later, it became final.
And that's when Bill Daley came out in Nashville and did the same exact speech that John Podesta said.
So I think everybody's behaving reasonably, although it's 2 o'clock in the morning and it may not feel that way. And I can certainly understand the Trump people are on the cusp of this thing that a lot of people never thought where they'd never get to.
And they thought it was
going to happen tonight, and I certainly understand their impatience. But I think people are doing it.
Here's my advice. Here's my advice. It'll be sweeter tomorrow morning. I can tell you from personal experience. Heck of a lot better to enjoy it at 10 o'clock in the morning than do it in the middle of the night.
Carl, can you tell us behind the scenes when that advice was given to George W. Bush in 2004? Let's wait.
Actually, it was his advice. People said, "What do you want to do? Should we go out? Should we go out?" And he said,
wait.
"Or wait. We're going to do it in the morning."
And did Kerry concede before he went out?
Yes, in the morning. In the morning, I believe.
And that's another thing. You don't want to claim victory before the other person concedes.
And you made the right point. You look strong. You look strong when you do that. And the country feels more confident.
Plus, I think,
guess what? The speech also gets better.
But I also think that the winner would want the person conceding to go first.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that would be the gracious thing to do. If I were the Trump team, I would wait, let her figure this out, polish her speech, the second one that she wrote, and then let her deliver that, and then wait a couple of beats, and then come out and have your moment.
Well, I must say that even from my position, I would think, I fully understand Trump supporters at this moment who just say, this is inevitable. This looks like it's a sure deal. Why can't people just call it for what it is? But I'm taken by what John Podesta said when he said, look, we're still counting votes. Every vote counts. And it triggered in my mind the thought that the Clinton campaign may be involved in legal action. They may be challenging some of these outcomes, some of the vote counts in some of these states that we have already called.
Yeah,
they may be taking this to another level.
If you don't think that's happening, I mean, it's happening.
That's what I think.
Look,
but we haven't heard that. That hasn't been reported.
No. I mean, they're prepared to have it happen if it gets to the-
They're prepared. But I would doubt that given, I mean...
They're not deploying lawyers.
No.
But if it gets to
if Trump
a margin...
wins Minnesota, or if he wins Michigan and he wins Pennsylvania, I mean, there's only so far her argument could go that it's tight enough. We need
and can't fight for Minnesota.
There's a hypersensitivity. Each side since 2000 now deploys armies of lawyers. If there was anything going on right now, it'd be moving across the wires. If they were looking to lock up boxes and serve injunctions and begin the whole process of
well,
protest,
earlier tonight we were talking about legal action, federal judges in North Carolina.
Right.
Taking action in Colorado as well. So there has been action. It's just that when I heard Podesta speak a few moments ago, what it said to me was, the Clinton campaign believes that their supporters are so aggrieved that they are now willing to fight and take steps that they had not previously taken.
May I make a motion for the House that we designate Juan to be the person who monitors this through the rest of the year? You can text us if you find anything that's serious.
I lost $100 tonight, and now this.
The decision desk may be ready to make a call. It's for breakfast burritos. We're going to be here.
We're in favor of that. And we also love this Bikers for Trump sign, because we're taking a super close-up of it. Listen, we've got a good guest here that I want to get to because he can answer a lot of our questions, and that is Jonathan Turley. You heard me mention him earlier. He's a constitutional law professor, and he joins us now. Great to see you, Professor. Let's just start where I left off with a mention of your name, not realizing you were here tonight, so that worked out well. But what extent do you think Barack Obama's executive overreaches may have played with the electorate here today? And what do you think the effect of the tolerance of it by those on the left will now have?
Well, I think that the strategy of President Obama did not turn out very well. You know, his effort to act unilaterally actually produced very few real benefits. He lost repeatedly in court, and in doing so created some very negative precedent for not only his administration, but future administrations. So it didn't turn out all that well. But this bill has come due for Democrats. You know, they supported the president when he said he would go it alone. And our system really doesn't have license for people to go it alone. But it's going to be difficult for the Democrats to object to a President Trump who wants to use the same powers. And in the hearings I testified before in Congress, I would remind members that President Obama would not be our last president. And I do think that now Democrats are going to have to do some soul searching if they object to those same powers being used by a President Trump. They risk being called hypocrites.
Walk us through, just remind us of some of the executive orders that Barack Obama tried. Obviously on immigration and Obamacare, those are the two biggies that come to mind.
Well, those are the big ones. The interesting thing about immigration is that the president sought the changes that he ultimately put through executive authority, and those changes were not accepted by Congress. And what was a very curious moment is he had a State of the Union address where he told Congress that because they would not give him the reforms that he had asked, he intended to circumvent that. And in one of the most curious moments, at least of my life as a constitutional scholar, half of Congress stood up and applauded the notion that they're going to be made obsolete. That's something I think James Madison would have found quite curious. I mean, he didn't believe that that type of moment would come to pass. But in various areas, everything from internet gambling to health care, as you mentioned, to No Child Left Behind, there's all of these areas the president decided that he would act unilaterally. And the thing about our system is the reason we don't have that option is you only have two choices as president. You either change Congress or you change their minds. Now, if you can't do either, not much gets done in a country that's divided. So I think that he did hurt his legacy, and I think that he alienated many people who felt that his acting unilaterally deprived them of some of their representational authority through Congress.
Hey, Jonathan, it's Brett Baer. Just wondering your thoughts on the decision by Mitch McConnell to hold up moving forward with Merrick Garland and any hearings for the Supreme Court. Politically, it seemed a risky move at the beginning. Now, after Governor Mike Pence on the trail talked a lot about the Supreme Court choices to come, and we see the numbers on evangelicals coming out, potentially because of SCOTUS picks down the road. Your thoughts on how that all played out?
Well, I expect that Judge Garland was watching tonight's developments with particular interest. You know, it's not a good thing in Washington when everyone says nice things about you. And I think that's been the situation with Judge Garland. He is a very well-respected jurist. He is not likely to be renominated, obviously, by President Trump if that comes about. He might not even be renominated by a President Clinton. So the question now as we go forward, you have one vacancy, but there's also 3 justices who are in their advanced years, and they might retire or leave the court. That means that the next president, and it could be a President Trump, could really influence the court literally for decades. I mean, if you're talking about 3 or 4 of a 9-member court, that's going to have the most pronounced effect, perhaps in the history of this country, on the outcome of various doctrines and rules. Remember, we have a lot of major cases that are really balanced by 1 vote. It's a 5-4 split. So to replace that number of justices could rewrite the law in this country.
Clearly, some cases this session were 4-4 that would have went the other way if Antonin Scalia was still alive.
That's right. And in some cases, it sort of broke even. You know, in some cases, the left won, in some cases, the right won. But this level of change